So I've been using the Logitech MX Master 3 mouse now for about 3 years, and it's served me well as my daily driver. However, for casual MMO gaming or the occasional productivity task, I couldn't help but feel a mouse with greater key binding capabilities could prove more useful. So many years ago, I used to use the Logitech G600 for casual gaming and the occasional productivity tasks, and it still remains one of my favorites to this day. But times have changed and my G600 is long gone. Logitech no longer make this model, nor do they have a direct successor. So I decided to scour the internet for various different options, and I settled on a short list of 2. So we have the Corsair Scimitar Elite Wireless, and we have the Red Dragon M913 Impact Elite. So let's take a look at both of these options and see which one I decided to keep. So in terms of size, the Corsair is more compact than the Red Dragon. The Red Dragon is wider and it's slightly longer in size, but it's not that much of a difference. The additional size of the Red Dragon actually mainly comes from the added thumb and pinky support that you won't find on the Corsair. But if you flip the devices over, it then becomes more apparent that the Red Dragon has a larger footprint. But overall, it's not a massive difference. So the Red Dragon also tops the scales with weight at 129 grams, whereas the Corsair comes in at 114 grams. But in real world use, 15 grams is really difficult to notice, at least for me. Some serious FPS gamers might be able to notice a difference, but I found both mice to be very lightweight and smooth to move around. If I had to be pushed to choose between the two, I would say the Corsair is a tad smoother. And I don't know whether that's down to it being a little bit more lightweight or having better quality feet on the bottom, but it's a really close call between the two. So it is worth noting that some people have mentioned that these mice are too big, but I haven't found that to be the case myself, but I do understand why some people with smaller hands might struggle a little bit. But MMO mice in general tend to be larger because they have to cater for all those additional buttons. And because of this, I wouldn't instantly recommend them for younger children, even if they are into their gaming. You'll notice right away that both of these mice have the traditional 12-button MMO style numpad on the side. Now I know there's various different style MMO numpads nowadays, but the 12-button style is tried and tested, and it's the one that's always worked best for me. I like having the buttons evenly distributed in rows, and I can turn those 12 buttons into 24, 36 or even 48 with modifier keys if I want to, which is great for games that have vast amounts of spells and abilities. You'll notice that the button style on these keypads are quite different. The Red Dragon uses angled buttons so you can feel the different rows, similar to the old G600 that I used to use, whereas the Corsair uses textured buttons on every other row to achieve the same result. Now I personally prefer the angled buttons on the Red Dragon, as I feel that the difference in rows is more obvious, but the button placement on both of these mice is easy enough to get used to over time. One cool feature that the Corsair has is the ability to actually slide the keypad back and forth to suit different hand sizes, and you can do this by unlocking it at the bottom of the mouse using the provided Allen key. Now this key slider is actually unique to Corsair. When I received my mouse, I did adjust it slightly and it made it feel more comfortable. So it's not just a gimmick. Is it essential? No, but it's nice to have that added customization. Both mice come with a USB-C cable for wired mode and charging, along with a wireless adapter which you can store under the mouse for convenience on the go. The Corsair can be a little bit fiddly to remove the wireless adapter, but it does stay secure and it sits flush. Whereas the Red Dragon uses a nice magnetic holder, but that's more likely to fall out on the go, and it protrudes slightly, which means you won't be able to keep the wireless adapter in the mouse if you want to use it in wired mode. Now, one thing the Red Dragon does have that the Corsair doesn't is a small plastic travel case, which some people might find useful. When it comes to build quality, the Corsair does stand out. The keypad looks better quality, the mouse is mainly built with sort of matte, soft touch plastics, and it feels more refined with added grip texture on the ring finger and a grippier scroll wheel. Now, I'm not saying that the build quality of the Red Dragon is poor. Actually, the difference in quality is much closer than I thought it would be, given the price difference, which I will touch upon later. Now, sure enough, there's still quite a lot of glossy black plastic, and you don't get the additional grip texture that you get on the Corsair, but the overall build quality of the Red Dragon still feels really good. And I'm pretty sure if Bruce Wayne had a gaming setup in his Batcave, that this would be his go-to. Now on to ergonomics, which is arguably one of the most important areas, but can be subjective depending on grip style and hand size. Now I have large hands and I use a palm grip, and I find both of these mice comfortable to use. It probably helps that they're large mice and they have added support for your ring finger. Interestingly though, if we're talking about pure ergonomics, I would have to choose the Red Dragon. Now some people might think the added thumb and pinky support is added bulk, but I actually think it helps the overall feel of the mouse and makes it feel a lot more comfortable. That particular design works really well for me. Both of these mice can be used in wired mode using the USB-C cable provided, or wirelessly via the 2.4 GHz adapter. Now the Corsair Scimitar actually supports Bluetooth connectivity as well, which unfortunately the Red Dragon doesn't support. This isn't a problem for me as I tend to prefer 2.4 GHz over Bluetooth, but it might be a deal breaker for some people. Next up, battery life. According to the specs, Corsair has an 875 mAh battery and the Red Dragon has a larger 1000 mAh battery. Despite this though, the Corsair has the larger battery life, boasting 120 hours without RGB lighting, compared to the Red Dragon's 80 hours without RGB lighting. And Corsair claim they can extend that even further to 150 hours if you use Bluetooth, which is really impressive. Both the Corsair Scimitar and the Red Dragon M913 feature 16 programmable buttons, macro recording and RGB lighting control. The Scimitar uses Corsair's iCUE software, which might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it is well established and it's more user friendly. In contrast, the Red Dragon's proprietary software is straightforward to use, but it feels less polished. The Red Dragon M913 features two onboard profiles, which you can toggle between using the mode button at the bottom of the mouse, and it has a dedicated eco button which will turn off RGB lighting without altering your profile to extend battery life. Now if you like to adjust your DPI on the fly, there are buttons on top of the mouse which will cycle through 5 customizable modes ranging from 100 to 16,000 DPI. And if you want to adjust your USB polling rate, you can do this as well. With the Corsair, you can manage multiple profiles using the iCUE software, but if you want to use it via Bluetooth or independently from the iCUE software, it will come with 3 predefined profiles which can be customized and extended to 5 profiles if needed. There's a profile button underneath the mouse which lets you cycle through different options, and there's an RGB indicator which indicates which profile is currently active. The DPI button on top of the Corsair allows you to cycle through various different DPI sensitivities from 100 to 26,000 DPI. You also get an RGB indicator to let you know which DPI mode you're in. Now if you don't want a dedicated DPI button, the Corsair actually allows you to remap that key binding to something else, which the Red Dragon doesn't allow. If you want to make changes to the USB polling rate, the Corsair actually goes down as low as 0.5 milliseconds, which is super responsive. The iCUE software can really shine with features such as surface calibration for optimal tracking and special key bindings that will open certain applications, control media, or even enter specific text. It will also control things like the brightness of your RGB lights, and if you've got multiple iCUE compatible devices, you can sync your RGB lighting for a more unified look. Now a quick note for Mac users, iCUE software is supported on macOS, but the Red Dragon software isn't. Now that doesn't mean to say that the Red Dragon won't work on macOS devices, it will, but it does mean that you're more than likely going to have to set up the Red Dragon on a Windows device first, especially if you want specific key bindings for it to be useful on the Mac. Now that won't affect many gamers, but it might affect people that do plan to use it for productivity tasks on the Mac. You might find it less convenient. For those of you that are interested, here's what the button clicks sound like on each mouse. I picked up both of these mice on offer, and the Corsair normally retails at around £129.99, but I got it for £79.99, which is around 100 US dollars. The Red Dragon normally retails for around £46.99, but I managed to get it for £35, which is roughly 45 US dollars. So there's no denying that the Red Dragon's better value for money at less than half the price of the Corsair. And at that price, you could even consider buying a second Red Dragon as a backup. So final thoughts, both mice have really impressed me during the time that I've had them. And if I was to go on brand reputation and specs alone, there would be one clear winner, which is the Corsair Scimitar Elite Wireless Mouse. And for many of you watching this video, that may well be the right choice for you. And I'm not going to hesitate in recommending it, it is a good mouse. I personally like features from both of these mice, and in an ideal world, I would merge the two together. I would keep the keypad and the ergonomics from the Red Dragon, and the application, customizability, and possibly the build quality from the Corsair. So I had to decide on one to keep, and in the end, I chose the Red Dragon. Now this might come as a surprise to some people, but bear in mind I'm a casual MMO gamer, and I will use this occasionally for video editing. Now I know I mentioned the lack of macOS support, but I'm the type of person who, when it comes to key bindings, I will set and forget them, and it's rare I'll make any more changes. So for me, this hasn't had too much of an impact. I don't require Bluetooth, I don't need more than 2 profiles, and I certainly don't need to set my DPI to 26,000. Also, a difference in battery life wasn't that noticeable, or at least not enough for it to impact my decision. But what was noticeable was the difference in comfort and how much easier it was to detect the buttons when playing MMOs, which for me is key. Along with the fact that it's half the price of the Corsair, I just felt that the Red Dragon was the right choice for me. Many of the extra Corsair features proved irrelevant to me, but they might prove invaluable to you. So consider wisely when making a choice. Both mice are great, but they do have slightly different use cases. If you like the look of the Corsair but can't justify the price tag, it's worth considering the Corsair Scimitar Elite RGB wired version, which is very popular. In fact, my brother has it and has used it for several years and swears by it. The Red Dragon also has a wired version worth considering. And that wraps it up for today. If you're curious about either of these mice, I'll leave a link in the description below for you to check them out. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's video or found it useful, consider hitting that like button and subscribe for more content like this. Until next time, cheers.